Dear students, welcome to EPG Pathashala. I am Professor K. Srinivas from Pondicherry University. I teach philosophy at this university. I am the course coordinator of religion and philosophy in the subject Indian culture. In this module, we are going to learn about the central doctrines of the Upanishads. The objectives of this module are: what is the meaning of Upanishad? What are the major Upanishads? What is their content? Well, as you are aware of the Indian tradition, Upanishads form quintessence of the Indian tradition, and they are considered to be the end portions of the Veda. Therefore, they are called Vedanta. They represent the philosophical wisdom of the classical Indian tradition. According to the classical Indian philosophers, there are more than 200 of them, but many hold that there are only 108 Upanishads. However, some of the Upanishads are considered to be very important for any philosophical discussion, as the great acharyas have written commentaries on them. Now, the major Upanishads are Isha, Kena, Katha, Prashna, Mundaka, Mandukya, Taittiriya, Chandogya, Brihadaranyaka, and Svetasvatara. These Upanishads represent all the four Vedas, as they do not belong to any single Veda. These Upanishads represent the Jnana-kanda of the Veda. Many Upanishads are omitted, for the contents of those lesser known Upanishads are already found in the above mentioned major Upanishads. Well, to start with, the term Upanishad means to sit nearby or close by. Means the disciples have to sit close to the teacher or to the guru in order to learn something. The deserving disciples used to sit close to the teacher in order to have knowledge of them. It is difficult to state anything about the great Upanishadic teachers and inquirers of truth. Sometimes their names are mixed up with the gods or mythological or historical persons. The philosophy of Upanishads is not a system of philosophy, but several philosophical doctrines are brought together in these texts. Upanishads, strictly speaking, do not belong to the same time and place, because the Vedas are written in different times. Therefore, the Upanishads, since they belong to different Vedas, they also belong to different times. They are also not composed by the same authors. Hence, one finds different views and interpretations on the same texts. There is no uniform method followed in explaining the contents of the Upanishads, and sometimes the methods do not adhere to any logic. Myths, etymologies, analogies, dialogues are used by the gurus to explain the philosophical content of the Upanishads. They are the only logical proof available to us today. There is normally a tendency to mix up mythological persons, deities, and historical persons in the Upanishads. We come across these names in the form of dialogues and narratives, because every Upanishad is found in a dialogue form. And also one finds a lot of narratives in the Upanishads. For instance, we often come across the names such as Yajnavalkya, the spiritual guru of Janaka. It is believed that both lived around 9th century BC. It appears that the former appeared in many controversies with many philosophers, that is Yajnavalkya. Well, from these dialogues, we come to know the kind of philosophical instruction that is available in the Upanishads. Similarly, the names of Maitreyi and Gargi, the two wives of Yajnavalkya, also found in the Upanishadic literature. The other prominent names that one comes across in this literature include Sanat Kumara, Narada, Sandilya, Ajatasatru, Gargya, Bhrugu, Aupamanyava, Ashwapati, Budila, Gautama, Kausitaki, Raikva, Nachiketa. By and large, the central doctrines of the Upanishads focus mainly on the ultimate reality, Brahmanatman. There are several illustrations found in different Upanishads about the nature of Brahmanatman and how it can be realized. Normally we come across in the Upanishads that Brahman is Nirguna, that means it is qualityless. Niravayava, there are no parts in Brahman. Nirvisesha, there is no content in the Brahman. And we also say it is Anirvachaniya because it is something indefinable. And it is Anadi because we do not know about its beginning. Since it does not have any beginning, it does not have any end too. That's why the Upanishads call Brahman Anadi. It is trans-relational because there is no other object with which it can be compared. And it is trans-rational because since Brahman is infinite, our finite rationality can never capture the nature of Brahman. And it is the only reality we find. Now coming to the Isha Upanishad, it is smallest Upanishad. And this Upanishad belongs to Shukla Yajurveda because we have two forms of Yajurveda, Shukla Yajurveda and Krishna Yajurveda. But Isha Upanishad belongs to Shukla Yajurveda. It starts with a prayer which states that this and the other world are full. Even if something is taken out or something is added to the full remains as it is. This is the doctrine of the infinite to which the addition or subtraction make no difference. Indirectly, this Brahman, this Upanishad is referring to that supreme reality Brahman. The Brahman is full and the Brahman is infinite. Nothing can be added to Brahman and nothing can be taken out of Brahman. Even if you add something to Brahman, nothing happens to Brahman. Even if something is taken out of Brahman, nothing happens to Brahman. Brahman remains as Brahman. Regarding Brahman, this Upanishad says that it is one and does not move. It is faster than mind. It is far, and it is nearer, and is outwards yet inwards to us. So this Upanishad says that Brahman is faster than mind, although it does not move. It appears to be far, but it is nearer. It appears to be outwards, but it is inwards. Now, those who take to the life of action, karma, are ignorant and go to the darker worlds. Through action, we can only purify our minds. It is only through meditation we attain immortality. Everything in this world is pervaded by the Lord. Strictly speaking, this Lord is nothing but Brahman according to this Upanishad. Then we move on to Kena Upanishad. This Upanishad belongs to Samaveda. It raises the question, what is it that impels the senses and mind to perceive and understand? What is it that sustains all, but which nothing sustains? He who says that he knows it does not really know it, and he who says that does not know it indeed knows it. That is the Atman, the Brahman. Without it, the sense, mind, and even the gods can do nothing. In this Upanishad, we also come across the idea of Vidya, Logos, or the higher reason. Strictly speaking, this Upanishad says all our sense organs, mind, they operate because of Atman. And this Atman is none other than Brahman. In the absence of this Atman, mind does not function, senses do not function. Therefore, for their function, they are dependent upon this Brahman Atman. And it is the one which sustains everything. But it does not require anything to sustain itself. That is the content of this Upanishad. Then we have Kathopanishad. This Upanishad belongs to Samaveda. This is one of the philosophically important Upanishads because it teaches us about the knowledge of what happens to man after death. Such knowledge is more valuable than any other knowledge in the world, for it is none other than the knowledge of the Atman, which is the smallest and the greatest than the great. The objects are the higher than the senses, and the mind higher than the objects. The individual's reason, buddhi, higher than mind. The cosmic reason, or mahat, is higher than the individual reason. The unmanifest avyakta, the same as the goddess Aditi of the Vedas, higher than the cosmic reason. And the Purusha, Atman, is the higher than the unmanifest. There is nothing higher than the Purusha. The Atman cannot be understood by reason. Because Atman being infinite, Atman being the supreme reality, our ordinary reason cannot grasp it. It has to be grasped only as is. In other words, in order to know what Atman is, one has to realize it. Such a realization, according to Upanishad, this Upanishad is nothing but to become one with the Atman. It can be realized by withdrawing speech into mind, mind into reason, the reason into the cosmic reason, and that into Atman of peace, Shantatma we call. Everything is a branch of Atman, and that Atman is their root. The whole is an Asvatha tree, whose roots are above and branches are below. So the Atman is compared with Asvatha tree in this particular Upanishad. Therefore, the branches which we see, they are the branches that come out of the roots. Therefore, the roots are above and the branches are below, because Atman is something transcendent. Being transcendent, its roots are always above. That is the essence of this Upanishad. Now the second question is, who are gods? And who among them is the greatest? The gods are ether, Akasha, air, fire, water, earth, speech, mind, eye and ear. Greater than all of them is prana, the life principle. For example, what is the fun of having all other gods when there is no life? Therefore, prana becomes very important. The third question is, what is the origin of prana? How does it divide itself into senses of man? It is the reflection of Atman and employs its divisions for performing different functions in the body. That means every function is ultimately the reflection of Atman. Without Atman, no indriya, no organ functions, for everything is ultimately rooted in Atman. This is the essence of this Upanishad. Now, the fourth question is, what happens to the gods in sleep, and who is it that sleeps? In sleep, all the senses become one with the God of mind. Only prana, the life principle, and its involuntary activities continue to work, because if prana also goes to sleep, then we die. There is no life. Therefore, prana, the life principle, does not go to sleep. In dream, the agent experiences whatever is experienced during the waking state again, and even what is not then experienced. In dreamless sleep, that is what we call the deep sleep, the agent is overpowered by a psychic force. The fire of his conscious being or its intense light, and does not see dreams. Like birds resting on a tree, everything rests in Atman, because everything takes rest in Atman. The fifth question is, what does the word Om represent? It is same as the Brahman, both manifest and unmanifest together. Now coming to Mundaka Upanishad. This Upanishad belongs to Atharva Veda, the last of Vedas. It distinguishes higher knowledge from lower one, because according to this Upanishad there are two levels of knowledge. The former is the knowledge of Brahman, that is the knowledge of higher knowledge, or the knowledge of Brahman, Atman. And the lower knowledge is the knowledge that belongs to the empirical sciences, or to incidental sciences, Vedas and their subsidiaries, strictly speaking. Just as spider throws out its web and withdraws it into itself again, Atman throws the world out of itself and withdraws itself into itself. The life of action and sacrifices are simply unstable. They belong to the world of ignorance. The lower spirit in man looks for worldly benefits, and the higher simply remains as a witness. It is often compared with two birds in this Upanishad. One bird witnesses, and the other is the bhokta, that which enjoys. The former is the higher spirit or Atman, and the latter is the lower spirit. It is the lower spirit which is subject to the rewards and punishments, depending upon its merits and demerits. But it can overcome its bondage by realizing the higher spirit. Atman cannot be known through intellect or by study. One can know it only when one is chosen by it. So, according to Mandukya Upanishad, which is part of, again, Atharva Veda, this particular Upanishad teaches us about 4 states of Atman. These 4 states are waking state, dream state, deep sleep state, and the original pure state of Atman. In the first state, the consciousness of the Atman is directed towards external material objects. In this state, it has 7 parts and 19 gateways. The 7 parts are forehead, eyes, the life principle, bodily center, abdomen, feet, and face. In dream state, it has all these 7 parts and 19 gates, but its consciousness is turned towards the dream objects. In this state, there are no external objects. The mind is focused to the internal objects. These objects are not made up of gross matter. In this state, the Atman is technically called Taijasa, for its experience is constituted by psychic force. In the state of deep sleep, the Atman sees no dreams and it desires nothing because there are no external objects, there are no sense organs, there is no mind, only Atman remains. Its consciousness is its only gate, and all plurality becomes one with it. This state of Atman is called Prajna, for it is pure and undifferentiated. The 4th state of Atman is called Turiya. In this state, it is beyond thought and speech. It knows itself without any medium. It is free from the unconscious element. Now coming to Taittiriya Upanishad. This Upanishad belongs to Samaveda. It talks about 5 types of union. They are the union of physical elements like earth, water, air, etc. The union of shining objects such as sun, fire, lightning. The union of knowledge like that in the teacher, student, and lecturers. And there are 2 more unions. They are the union of physiological parts like upper jaw, lower jaw, and speech. The Brahman is the truth, the consciousness and the infinite. From it born is ether, from ether, air, from air, fire, from fire, water, and from water, earth. And from earth are born plants, from plants, food, from food, Purusha, Atman, or man as I. It is enveloped by, actually, this Atman in I or in Jiva is enveloped by 5 koshas. And these 5 koshas belong to 3 bodies or sariras. These bodies are called Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, and Karana Sharira. Now, the Atman is enveloped by these bodies, and each body consists of some koshas. For example, there are 5 koshas: Annamaya kosha, Pranamaya kosha, Manomaya kosha, Vijnanamaya kosha, and Anandamaya kosha. The first 2 koshas belong to gross body or Sthula Sarira, and the rest 2 belong to subtle body Sukshma Sarira. And the last kosha belongs to causal body Karana Sarira. Each later stage is the Atman of the former. According to this Upanishad, everything is originated from non-being, in the sense that the reality in the beginning is indeterminate and it is the unmanifest or avyakta. Now coming to Aitareya Upanishad, this Upanishad belongs to Rig Veda. It gives a semi-mythological account of creation. Atman correlates the microcosm and macrocosm, and the gods become the psychophysical principles. This Upanishad ends with a saying that all the mental functions are only names of our rational consciousness, prajnanam, and that our rational consciousness is the Brahman. Coming to Chandogya Upanishad, this is one of the most important Upanishads and is also one of the oldest Upanishads because it belongs to the oldest Veda called Rig Veda. It is second largest of the Upanishads. After liberation, man's spirit rests with the gods and the Brahman in the highest world. This conception is theistic. However, the Upanishad says that everything is verily the Brahman, Sarvam Khalidam Brahman. It is the innermost to us. Brahman is the smallest yet the largest. For instance, Uddalaka Aruni teaches his son Svetaketu that in deep sleep, speech enters mind. Mind the life principle prana, the life principle the psychic force Tejas, the psychic force the supreme deity. Similarly, Indra also followed the advice of Prajapati and saw his perishable body in the water pot and doubted how his perishable body could be the Atman which is imperishable. So he came back to Prajapati for further instruction. Prajapati told him that the person in the deep sleep and dreamless sleep is Atman. So according to the dialogue between Uddalakarani and Svetaketu and Indra and Prajapati, it is clearly mentioned that the body is perishable, but that which resides in this body, namely the Atman, is something imperishable. One can only see the image of one's own body, but one cannot see the image of Atman, because it is something infinite, it is something invisible. So that is the essence of that Upanishad. Now coming to Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, this Upanishad belongs to Shukla Yajurveda. This is the largest of the Upanishads. One finds lots of discussion on philosophical matters in this Upanishad. This is the reason normally one quotes a lot from this Upanishad to substantiate one's position with regard to the nature of Brahmanatman. According to this Upanishad, the horse sacrificed in the Ashwamedha is the cosmos. One who sacrifices the cosmos alone can realize Atman. In the beginning, there was only Atman, and it asserted, I am, and became the I. This I felt lonely and afraid. But one can afraid of someone else only when something else is there. But apart from Brahman, there is nothing. For instance, Ajnavalkya teaches his wife Maitreyi that no one wants an object of pleasure for the sake of pleasure, but for the sake of Atman. By knowing it, everything else is known. Once the Atman is known, then there is no difference between the knower and the known. The polarity between the subject and object vanishes. How can one know the knower? This Atman is the Brahman. I am Atma Brahma. There is also a debate between Yajnavalkya and a number of inquirers about truth. Now, coming to Svetasvatara Upanishad, this Upanishad belongs to Samaveda, and its contents represent theism. For example, the philosophers like Sri Ramanuja and Sri Aurobindo profusely quote from Svetasvatara Upanishad to substantiate their position. It speaks of Brahman as personal being. It highlights some contemporary doctrines of the origin of the world. The origin was time, nature, necessity, chance, elements, cosmic womb, the finite self. In fact, there are two Atmans, the perishable one and the imperishable one. Man is the combination of both. The perishable is the manifest which enjoys the fruits of actions, like Jiva, like you and I. The imperishable is the Atman as cosmos, which is nothing or none other than Brahman. The perishable is the Pradhana. That means it is Prakriti, made of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. It is Maya. It's a kind of a cosmic illusion. Everything that belongs to Maya is perishable, because Maya itself is perishable. We also come across in this Upanishad the passage about the two Atmans representing two birds, like in Mundaka Upanishad. To conclude, I would like to state that the above account about the central doctrines of the Upanishads clearly states about the nature of supreme reality. The supreme reality is something which is unmanifest, avyakta. But in its manifest form, in its vyakta form, it is projected as the creator God. For example, in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya of Adi Shankara, Shankara makes a distinction between Nirguna Brahman and Saguna Brahman. The Nirguna Brahman is something which is unmanifest. The Saguna Brahman is something which is manifest. For the Saguna Brahman is treated as the creator God. The world in which we live is the manifest form of that Saguna Brahman, whose being is shared by the world of existence. The perishable world appears to be real, but behind its reality, there is an eternal principle called Brahmanatman. I hope this module would have given you sufficient information with regard to the objectives, such as what is the meaning of Upanishad, what are the major Upanishads, and what is their content. And if you need further information, go through the suggested readings and learning materials so that you can find something more about the central doctrines of the Upanishads. Thank you.